coming this evening. My name is Courtney Michonne. I'm the Assistant Professor of Ceramics here at Western New Mexico University. And I'd first like to thank a few people who've made this possible, beginning with Lee Gruber, who pioneered the Clay Festival and gives our community the opportunity to immerse ourselves in clay every year for the past 7 years. I'd also like to thank our university president, Dr. Shepard, for his collaboration and support for the festival. And he's not here, but we'll applaud for him anyway. I'd also like to thank our Expressive Arts Department Chair, Michael Metcalf, who's sitting right back there. His hard work and time has also made this event possible. And I'd also like to thank the staff and volunteers who devote their time to the Clay Festival every year. So Julia Galloway is a utilitarian potter and professor at the University of Montana, Missoula. She has exhibited across the United States, Canada, and Asia, and her work is included in the collections of the Renwick Gallery, the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C., the Long Beach Art Museum, Long Beach, California, the Ceramics Research Center at the Arizona State Art Museum, and the Alfred Ceramic Art Museum in New York. Julia has served on the board of the Haystack Mountain School of Crafts and currently serves on the board of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts, along with serving as the Director-at-Large on the National Council for Education of the Ceramic Arts, which is better known as NCECA. In 2017, she was awarded one of the largest unrestricted grants available in the United States today, the Artist Fellow Grant by United States Artists. This past spring, she was named the Distinguished Scholar for the University of Montana, the first artist to receive this recognition since 1984. As an undergraduate student, Julia Galloway was one of the first contemporary potters that I learned about. Her reputation precedes her as one of the most dedicated teachers in the field and one of the most innovative artists in contemporary ceramics. Until last week, I had not seen Julia Galloway demonstrate her work or seen her teaching philosophy. But I've seen her methods of handle making twice, done by 2 other prominent artists in our field on 2 different occasions. Every professor I've studied under has celebrated her work and spoke highly of her. As a student and educator, I've used and recommended her online resource, the Field Guide for Ceramic Artisans, which continually lends a hand to all types of makers in the ceramic field. Witnessing the first week of her workshop, I can see that the legend is real. Julia is one of the most energetic and intelligent makers of our time and brings that knowledge and excitement to every student in every class. I was honored to have the task of choosing the headliner artist for this year's Playfest, and Julia was my first choice. To be fair, I asked my colleagues in the field who would be their first choice, and every single person I asked had Julia Galloway at the top of her list. We are so fortunate that she accepted our invitation and come all the way here to Silver City. So without further ado, I want to give Julia Galloway the stage and welcome her.
Well, I better live up to that. Hi, you guys. I'm Julia. Just in case you weren't sure. So, hi. Thanks for coming tonight. You guys, it's hard to get 45 minutes free. Do you know, we're busy people. There's a lot going on in the world, and I really appreciate you coming out for 45 minutes to talk about and look at pottery. It's so odd, but it's what is bringing us all together. How great, Clayfest, what a deal. I mean, really, what a deal. We should do this in Montana. Do you guys want to come to Montana? Yeah. Come on up, we'd love to have you. We'd really love to have you. So, anyways, I also just wanted to ask, are there any current or retired teachers in the audience? Would you raise your hand? I want you all to stand up, please. Come on, retired or current teachers, stand up. I want to thank you for your service to our country, because we need good teachers, and I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to launch in here. You ready?
Ready.
Ooh. I love doing this. I just want to start here with a quick part of a poem by a really fabulous potter named Mary Oliver. This is called Wild Geese. And she says, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert. You only must let the soft animal of your body love what it loves." What does that mean? You do not have to be good. You just have to be great. You only must let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Well, that's a complicated statement, but I would say that we all in some way love pottery. You know, nothing touches our lip as often as a cup. Nothing. And the intimate relationship that we develop with pottery is like none other. It becomes an object for storytelling. It develops meaning. It's how we stay in touch with people even after we've lost them. We keep their cups. We keep them around us. Pottery has an incredibly long lifespan. As we've been looking at, my poor students have never seen so many slides in their life. And they are just chomping at the bit. It's so fabulous. So pottery is a very special place in our world, and it's a place that we come together, whether it be through making, or whether it be through using, at a table, sharing over. It's an object that supports, and it really is a place where we can be with each other. So I've been making pots a long time, and my work is influenced by just a few things. But the first primary influence of mine is work itself. This is a guy who's a photographer for National Geographic. Do you need this? Do I need this?
Yeah.
I need this. Okay, is this okay? We're good? This guy, he's a photographer for National Geographic. And he's do we need the lights on?
Just to see you until the slides are.
Oh, let's start the slides. Please, I'm not that interesting. So this guy, he's a photographer for National Geographic, and he's taking a photograph of blue heron that's on the other side of the lake. This is up in Maine. And you know what I love? I love so much that he's up to his neck in it, and he doesn't even care. He doesn't even realize that he's up to his neck in it because he's so interested in taking this photo in the birds on the other side of the lake. That's how my studio practice is, right? I just never even realized that it was 4:30 in the morning. Another thing that influences my work is really sort of where I'm from. So these are two pots up here, and the pot on this side, so on your left, is class, what is it? Song Dynasty pot that came across the... Oh, you get an A+ for the next hour. Okay, great. All right, so this is the Song Dynasty pot that came across the Silk Road, and a Syrian potter saw it, and he made the one over here. And he was copying that one, but he's from a different culture, so the pots look different. We can't help but be where we're from, right? And the questions we ask, we cannot help it. Next. Oh, that's me. Carol, where are you? Oh, that was so funny. Anyways, poor Carol has been pressing next on my slides all week. So here I am next. Carol, you didn't do so well on that one. I grew up in Boston, and I'm very much from New England, and really can still consider myself a bit of a damn Yankee. And there's something about that sort of connection with time and history that's very interesting to me. My stepmother's house was built in about 1720. So there's I have this sense of history to me, and I think somewhere in there is lodged pottery. So I've been making pots a long time. This is a woman in Guatemala, and that's what she makes, that's how she dresses, and that's where she lives. And when I saw this photo, I thought, I know you. You're up to your neck in it, and you don't even realize it yet. But you can't help but be exactly who you are. I understand that. So pottery, what is it doing for us? How does it bring us together? I'm just going to show you some pots that I've made over the last couple of years so you have something to look at while I blab on incessantly about ceramics. So how is it that we come together? How does working with our hands unite us? There's something about the instinct of it, of how people come together, that really is what it is ceramics. So last night at 10:30, my students all sitting around just a few tables, putting out spouts and handles, talking to each other. And then in turn, those pots go into the world and people sit around tables with those pots and talk to each other. So I think it's sort of how it comes together. These are cream and sugar sets. They're my favorite thing to make because the creamer's job in this world is to pour out nourishment. whether it be milk, cream, coconut water, that's like a thing, or, you know, sort of half and half soy milk. And the sugar bowl's job in this world is to contain sweetness. And you know, that's a pretty good combination. Something that's pouring out something that's rich and nourishing, and something else which is holding something sweet inside. So cream and sugar pots are two pots that make up one idea. This is a cream and sugar bed, and underneath the pillow is where the sugar is. This is a cream and sugar lazy boy that I just made just because my woodworker friends think they're so cool. So I had to make a little cream and sugar bed as well. So I think that pottery is really where we come together. I started making pottery a very long time ago. I'm 50 years old, and I started making pots when I was in high school. And I bought my wheel with my babysitting money. And I babysat, it was $2.01 an hour. So that was a lot of hours. But needless to say, you know, I bought my potter's wheel and I brought it home on the subway. And if anybody's been to Boston, this clay place is in Back Bay, which is the B line, and I lived on the C line. So I had to transfer to Park Street. And I only really remember that I bought the wheel then because I had to ask the turnstile guy to open up the wheelchair gate because I couldn't lift my wheel, the crate with my wheel in it, over the turnstile. And I think of that young woman dragging this crate up the top of the hill. We lived in a 5-floor walk-up. And I had my wheel between my bedroom, my bunk bed, and my dresser. Was my mother like a saint? She was a saint. So anyways, I had my wheel there and I made pots there. This is a water ewer that would go by your bed at night. And do you see the little holes? The lid is a cup. So you take a little sip, and then when you put the cup back on, if there was still water in the cup, it would go back into the pot, right? It wouldn't go like wherever. So anyways, on the cup you can see those little dots, and those are piercing through the cup. And so I put clear glaze in those little teeny holes, which sealed them. So when you look into this cup, you can see those little points of light first thing in the morning when you go to just wet your whistle, just a little bit. This is where pottery rules, right? Creating intimate moments of tenderness. So I started making pots in high school. My teacher, Mr. Lane, I would say, "Mr. Lane, English is canceled. Can I make pots?" He'd say, "Really?" "Sure." English was never canceled. But, you know, he knew that I should be somewhere, and it probably would be better if I was there. You know, isn't that what art teachers do? Isn't this what all teachers do? They make a place for students to be. You know, kids need a place to be. When you're 18, 16, you need a place to go. And I just lucked out. You know, those were kind of ruckus times in my family of origin, and I went there. And he said, "Well, if you want to make pots, you can do that. You know, you can even go to school to make pots." And I thought, I'd gone to heaven. So I went to school to make pots. So we're going to look at a couple bodies of work tonight. The first body of work was made 10 years ago, the second was made 5 years ago, and the last is what I'm making right now. That's in the Blue Dome Gallery. Blue Dome? Yeah. At Bear Mountain. Got it? Bear Mountain? Yeah, okay. That yes! Excellent. So in 2009, I moved to Montana. I had lived in Rochester, New York, and this is about an hour and a half north of me. I live near Glacier. And right as I was moving there, I had heard this really fabulous story about this guy, John James Audubon. You know, he was really a freak. So he would decide he was going to draw all the birds of North America, right? So he settles down to do this, and he realizes he's not going to live long enough to do this. So do you think he says, "I'll just skip California"? No. Do you think he says, "Well, I'll get my sons, daughters, wife, uncle, and neighbors to draw"? Yes, he does that. They rough out. They do all the foliage. You know what he does? He learns to draw with his left hand, right? So he does all of the roughing out with his left hand while his right hand rests. And then he does all of the detail work with his right hand. Do you think he's up to his neck in it? Absolutely. Anyways, when I heard about this story about him, I fell in love with him in a second. I was like, "Oh, that's my guy," right? Like, that's my guy. He's so obsessed. He can't help but do all these pots. So make all these pictures. So I start looking at his pictures and I start putting them on my pots. So here they are. This is the azure warbler. She's my favorite. And here I am drawing away, and it's just wonderful to look at these very beautiful drawings. And this sort of, I mean, he was for all of his oddness, he was in love with birds. I mean, you guys, he's in love with birds. And then everybody's sending me like dish towels with birds on them, and people are sending me socks with birds on them. And you know, like he really started the thing. He started the Audubon Society. So this is a dinnerware set that I made. And what was great is that the silver is on the outside of the dishes, so it reflects the birds when you stack up the dishes on your table. So, and I think this is funny. It's like kind of funny, right? Wait a minute, hold on. Gina, is this a little funny?
Really?
You don't think it's funny that like where you put your finger is the same shape as the goose's neck? So you're kind of strangling the goose when you go to use this cup? Not really. We got to work on your humor. Yeah, we got to work on your humor a little bit, sweet pea. Okay, anyway, so I make these pictures out of porcelain. I throw them on the wheel, and then I draw the bird into the surface using an X-Acto knife, and then I put colored slip on it. So I'm inlaying colored clay into the drawing. So that's how I do these. And I just do them by looking at the drawings. And on the other side of the pot is sort of where the bird would live. You know, they gotta have somewhere to hide out. So anyways, that's where the bird would live in this kind of detail. And I thought about this and I thought, you know, he did all the birds in North America. I bet I could do that too. So I started working on all the birds in North America. I mean, what, are you gonna leave some out? No, you can't do that. So here we go, here they are. This is the tufted titmouse. And this is the red-breasted nuthatch. Sorry about that, hold on. Uh-oh, wait a minute. I don't know what I did. I'm sorry, I'm not a PC girl. How about that? Is that good? Okay. So this is all the birds in North America. And this is a show in Philadelphia. And it's 1,400 cups, because that's about how many birds there are. And you guys, this is very, so you walk in and I chalked all the walls. So one side of the wall, one side of the cup mirrors or is related to the wall. So the bird is facing out, and then the back side of the cup matches the wall. So you could turn the cup around and hide the bird, okay? So it's a pretty big show. It's about 1,400 cups, and you see the cup that has a box. So in that box, there's a speaker and a motion sensor. So when you go to pick up this cup, that motion sensor finds you, like reads you, and the bird song of that cup comes out, right? So I thought I was making this like totally cool, relaxed, like beautiful little quiet garden where you'd sit and have like brilliant thoughts with little like beep, 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 like, yeah, no. 75 bird calls. Do you know how loud that is? It's like really loud, you know? And so at the opening, the first night of the opening, all these little kids come. I don't know how this worked, but all these kids come in, like 6 of them, and they're like this old. And they figure out that if they run around the gallery, they'll set off all the bird songs. So I walk in, and there are these parents who are like totally pretending it's not their kids. And then these kids that are like running around in circles, right? And then people have very, very close personal relationship with birds. Like they want their special bird, right? Like they want the robin, they want the chickadee, they want the nuthatch. So suddenly they realize that there's only one of every bird. And there's a little bit of panic in the group. Like, we have to get the red-breasted nuthatch for my aunt. We have to get that. Is it under red? So I have to put them up alphabetically so people can find them, right? So then they're saying, like, is it under red? Is it under breasted? Is it under nuthatch? Like, how are you going to find this, right? The whooping crane. Well, that's under W, or is it under C? Do you see what I mean? So the couples, or the groups of people, they get, like, a little panicked. And so they're running around trying to find their bird, right? And so never has this happened in a gallery where I've had somebody say at the top of their lungs, can you find the blue jay? We need the blue jay. And it would get a little like, she's really sick, we gotta get her the blue jay cup. We can't live with that. You know, and so like all these people are yelling, and then like the kids are like running around in circles, you know what I'm saying? And so then like the bird calls are going off like crazy. And then these 3 women come in, and they're very focused. And they're moving very slowly from cup to cup. And I think they're kind of weird, you know, but whatever. And so they come on up to me and they just poke me. I'm not kidding, they poke me. And they say, you got the grosbeak wrong.
Oh, no.
I was like, what? But I was nice, I was polite. I didn't harm, you know, I harnessed my inner Boston. And I just said, well, what do you mean? And she said, the beak is really actually too small. The beaks are much bigger. And I said, oh, weirdo. And I thought, she's up to her neck in it if she knows that. So I say, okay, all right, well, let's show me. So they go around, and they're from the Audubon Society. And they pick out 8 birds that I've made a mistake on. And I was like, only 8? Right on! Needless to say, they're running around, checking out all the birds. They're like putting notes on the ones that are wrong, and then people are yelling about the whooping crane, and then the kids are circling, and the people who own the gallery are sitting on the sidewalk. Right? It's like too much, they can't take it. Anyways, it was the most awesome opening of my life. So, you should live it up. Needless to say. So when I moved to Montana, I was so startled by how beautiful it was. And I was startled by, whenever I walked outside, I looked up. I grew up in Boston. We looked down. Right? Cracks on the sidewalk, you don't want to make eye contact. There's 50 million people in your little personal bubble space, right? You look down. You move to Montana, you look up. My posture got better. I got taller, I swear to God. At least 2 inches. Anyways, I was so stunned by looking up that I wanted to somehow connect that with my pots. And so when they say big sky, you guys also have big sky, but you determine the size of the sky really by the clouds. So this is cloud work that I started making when I moved to Montana. And I have to say, you guys, this is like the stupidest cloud shape that you can make, right? This is like a Charlie Brown cloud, but it really is like this. Okay, so this is a Charlie Brown cloud, but the viscosity of the melt, how that glaze is running and pulling, class note, how that glaze is running and pulling the slip out of those line clouds, that's what makes it delicious. So what I thought about when I moved to Montana is that I always look up. And when else do I look up in my life? I look up when I go into a place of worship, whether it be my own worship or not. When you go into a temple or a mosque or a church, you always look up. And there seemed to be great optimism in that. And that's how I felt about moving to Montana, was that you look up. And so I was working on this body of work, all based on the clouds in Montana and where I lived. So here's some cups with the stormy clouds of the afternoon where you got a duck and cover. And then here's when the clouds, the sun comes over the mountain but goes under the clouds and it turns gold. You guys have that, right? It's so beautiful when the clouds turn gold like this. And then these are cups moving up, clouds moving up. And on the very bottom of this picture is a decal of the world. And then there's that little handle on the picture. So if you live in the world and you need to get up into heaven where the clouds are, that ladder will help you out. Because we all need a little help getting to heaven. So I thought about this a lot. I thought a lot about clouds and drinking out of cloud cups. And I thought about, how do we eat where we're from? Is this not exactly like the slow food movement? Is this not exactly, I moved into an area that was ranches and farms, right? So we're really eating where we're from. I thought that sounded pretty good. So I went ahead and I made 450 plates that were all shaped like clouds. And then I hung them on the ceilings and the walls in the gallery in Great Falls, Montana, which is the largest farming community in Montana. So this is a museum there, and I hung these from the ceiling. So I clustered these plates into clouds, and then I painted the ceiling, and then I turned the temperature down in the room a lot, so that when you walked in, it was cold and brisk, you know? And it was kind of great, because at the opening, when you would get your snacks at the opening, I made cloud plates for the opening, so you were literally eating off of what you were looking at, right? Which is exactly what it means to be a farmer in Montana. This had some success, because usually at this museum in rural Montana, the gals would come in and see the show and go to the gift store, and the fellas would stay in the truck. They had to move an extra bench into the gallery because the fellas were hanging out in the cloud room. So thinking about where I'm living, I bought a house. Well, the bank owns the house, but I bought a house. I never thought that would happen. You know, I'm from a little bit of a family that struggled when I was growing up, and I never thought I'd have a house. And you know what? I was able to buy a house, and it was fabulous. I was 48 and I bought a house. And this is my house. So I thought I'd go ahead and put where I live on my pots. So this is a big blue couch, and then this is the living room. And so what I do with these is I make these pots and I just walk right into the living room and I draw my house on these pots. Because this is the content of pottery. You know, pottery, half of the idea in pots is use, and the other half is where it's going to go, and it's going to go in your house. So from my house to your house, right? Mi casa, su casa. I remember that, right? That was my Spanish, gals. That was it. So anyways, so I did a whole body of work based on where I lived, and when I had a show of this, I had it on a website. And so the first images on the website were on the outside of my house. And that as you scroll down through the website, you moved into my house. You moved into the living room, then you moved into the kitchen, and here's the kitchen. And you guys, I don't clean up my house before I draw it. Look, I'm a real person, and my socks are on the floor. My dog's still waiting to get out, and there's dishes in the sink, right? I'm not gonna spiff it up, because this is what it is. This is what a home is like. Do you see? So here we have the kitchen, and we're just gonna move around this picture. So this is what it's like when I move around my pots. So I'm drawing. Oh, there are my glasses. Always lose them. Thought I put them on the counter. Right? Stacked up dishes, toaster oven that doesn't work. You know that one. It's really there for holding dishes. And my little dog on there. So then, of course, slowly as you move through the house, through the living room, through the kitchen, and then you're going to sort of quietly move into my bedroom. This is a chair from my grandmother. And then, of course, here's the bedroom. And so as you scroll down through the website, you would slowly kind of move into my house. And I wanted to welcome you into my home. And I wanted to welcome you and say, this is domestic. This is where we live. Everything starts at home. Everything starts at home in some way, whether it be good, whether it be bad. This is where we grow up. And this is where we learn what we think is important, right? You don't have to be good. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. This is about domesticity and finding home. So somewhere in all that, I saw this image of memory, right? Because that house was, the images on my pots were very much about memory and home. And I thought, that is beautiful. That's like your brain having a memory. I thought that was so unremarkably beautiful, remarkably beautiful. And I was shocked. The next couple images are sort of pixelated, I apologize. So I started putting the brain, what your memory looks like, on the other side of where the memory was, right? So in my kitchen, and then here's the memory, and you can see the neurons, right? Those are the neurons from your brain firing, where you're having a memory, right? And I thought, like, this is super cool, you know? And then this really astounding thing happened. Shocking. I turned 50. Right? And I thought, I'm turning 50 and I'm doing work about the inside of my brain? Like, are you kidding me? There's like a whole world out there, right? There's this whole sort of world, and I'm doing pots about what the neurons in my brain look like. Like, that's pretty myopic. So I thought I should stop examining my belly button and get to work. And I saw this really fabulous show by Akio Takamori, who was a brilliant ceramic artist. We lost him last year. And he had this show, here he is, he had this show that was called Apology Remorse. And at the very end of his life when he was sick, he did bodies of work about what he should apologize for. And I'm not really sure, or images of apology, what to apologize for and images of apology, right? And this is, does anybody know who this is? This is the Chancellor of Germany after World War II, apologizing. So I thought about this a lot. What do we have to apologize for? And I don't mean like, what did you do wrong? I mean like in a larger cosmos thing. And it's about showing up, right? What are we responsible for? It's a good question. We're responsible for our kids, our community, our country. We're responsible for our water. We're responsible, right? We have to show up. So this is about, I saw this about apology and remorse. And at this time, I had heard this really fabulous story about the wandering albatross. This is the wandering albatross. And I had heard a story about it on NPR while I was traveling, so I wasn't really paying attention because I was looking for gate C4 in the Minneapolis airport. So I was kind of like stumbling along, like, do I get on the walk thing or do I take the thing? For my health, I shouldn't get on the walkway. Do you know what I mean? Well, anyways, this podcast is playing in the back of my mind about this wandering albatross. This wandering albatross has a wingspan of 11 feet, and it can stay aloft for a month because it can have half of its brain asleep while the other half is awake. And it can stay aloft on the currents over the ocean for a month. And currently, this albatross is getting caught in bycatch, right? It's getting caught in the bycatch for the fishermen from Taiwan and Japan and is getting decapitated at the rate of 1 every 5 minutes. And when I heard that, I threw up in the middle of the airport. And I thought, what do I have to apologize for? I don't eat fish. You know what I do? Do you see? Anyways, I don't want to be too heavy. Let's keep moving. So I started looking at the John James Audubon bird series and which ones had gone extinct since I had done the cup drawings. And I also remembered this thing. When I was in high school, it was the height of AIDS. When I was in high school and college, it was the height of AIDS. And I remember what was so incredible about it was that something that was unseen was made seen. That's when things changed. When something was totally unseen, like the gay population in New York and LA, in New York and California, and when it became seen, especially with something like the AIDS quilt, was when we started to invest in research. I thought about this a lot, and I was so inspired by the AIDS quilt. It made such an impression on me as a young woman that something could change by being visible. That seemed amazing to me. It seemed profound and intense, and I loved it. I loved that actually you could do something when something became seen. So these are the endangered species of North America. So these are endangered, vulnerable, and threatened, and extinct. And you can see they're all by animal. And so I had to learn how to draw, and I had to learn how to paint. I'm a hell of a decorator, but I didn't really know how to paint. I had to take a painting class, and the girl in high school next to me was better than me. But she was very nice. She kept telling me what a nice color that was. Needless to say, I started to do these commemorative plates of species that were threatened in North America. Here they are. Here we are working on them. And I had a show recently in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. And so I did all of the endangered species or threatened species in Pennsylvania. And I went by the state list. So what species they thought were endangered in their state. So a species could be endangered in Pennsylvania, but not in New York. So anyways, I just started drawing all of these species. And on the back of the plate, which is hard for you to see, behind the drawing, that's platinum luster. And so it's very, very reflective. So you can see your own reflection in the plates. And that was on purpose. That was to put you into the plates. So then I hung all of these plates together, and they covered the whole back wall of the gallery. So that when you came and you stood in front of these plates, right, you were completely enveloped, and it completely worked. Because when it comes to endangered species, regionalism is the way to go. All of these people would say, I saw that when I was a kid, right? And I'd say, well, yes, you did. And so then they would say, well, what about this, or what about that? And we'd start talking about it. And on the back of every plate, there's a 300-word essay about the species, why they're having trouble, and what a totally normal person like you or I could do about it. Because you know what? Endangered species, we can do it. You guys, AIDS, we did okay. We're coming out okay on the other end. We can do something about endangered species. So this is what I can do. You guys, I'm not going to join Greenpeace. I'm not going to throw myself in front of a whaling boat from Japan. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do not eat for 6 million days in front of the White House. I'm just not going to do that. But what I can do is make pots. I can make pots. So I made these. These are not functional. You really would not eat stew off of these, trust me. The function of these is education. So here they are. So I do have to tell you guys, the lesser long-nosed bat came off the endangered species list 2 months ago. Yeah. All right? It had been delisted since 1988. And it came off the endangered species list because it lived in caves on the Mexican border in Arizona. And a lot of rustlers were going in those caves hiding stuff, like drugs, to get over the border, right? So the Border Patrol came and they put gates in front of the caves. So now the bats can nest with relative ease. Like you guys, that was it. We can do this. We can do this, Anyways, listen to me get on my soapbox. Let's get back to pottery. Okay, anyway, so here we go. There's the lesser bat. So I started thinking about this a little bit with the bat, and I started thinking about urns. And what do we do with urns? So these are urns, an urn from China. This is an urn from Egypt. This is an urn from South America. I think these are beautiful. So my job is to make urns for endangered species. Urns, what the hell's that, right? I don't know. I have no idea. I think I should make the urn in relation to the size of the species. I don't know how to do that. So I call my local crematorium in Missoula. And I call her up and I say, oh shit, I did that thing again. Oh, excuse me for swearing. Okay, so I go and I look, and these are the urns. Are these like the ugliest urns you've ever seen? These are horrid. These are really horrible. So anyways, I call up my local crematorium, and I say to her, my grandmother's passed. She weighed 120 pounds. That's the weight of 2 wolves. How big should the urn be? Well, she talks on, and I ask her all these questions, and she keeps saying, well, like, was she in shape? And I'm like, was she in shape? Well, if she had strong bones, then the urn needs to be bigger. And I realized that, like, I was just lying myself into a hole. My grandmother's fine, you know? So I finally say to her, well, I gotta be honest, I'm doing an art project. I didn't want you to think I was weird. And she said, yeah, it's too late for that. And I said, all right. She said, listen, come on down and talk to me. So she shows me this chart, how you figure out how much ash you get from a species based on their weight. And so I said, well, I'm a visual learner, I need help. And she said, you should go buy couscous. Because couscous is kind of like ash, and that's going to help you out. I said, okay. So I went and bought a 25-pound bag of organic couscous, and I got busy making urns. So then you have to figure out how big these are. Because you guys, the smallest thing, this Alabama cavefish, barely a pound. And then the beluga whale, come on, 2,500 pounds. How big are these urns going to be? Like, oh my gosh, I got some work to do. So anyways, here I am figuring out how to make urns. There's the endangered species for inspiration. And here's the first run of urns. I'm trying to figure out how to get this on this pot. You guys, this is a totally different way of decorating pots, right? It has to look like the thing. I can't use my imagination. I have to figure out how to use a brush. So this is the Alabama cavefish. Here's the Appalachian cottontail. I'm trying to figure out what the hell these things look like, right? So if you're just doing one urn, then it seems just fine. But the truth is, in North America, endangered species, since the Industrial Revolution, which is when the term extinct was coined, you guys, I have about 2,400 urns to make. So I gotta get busy. I gotta figure out what these look like. So here's the toad, one of my favorite toads. And I'm looking at this. This is good. These are nice if it's one, but if you had 2,500 urns with gold luster on them, you'd just puke. So anyways, I finally came down to this. So I'm just going to do a simple urn with where it lives carved into it, with the species on the surface and the information on the lid. So needless to say, I have some work to do. And I'm very excited about doing this. I just think that it seems like a really good idea. It's a big project that I can sink my teeth into. There's a lot of really good potters that are making pots for every day now. I'm moving on to something else. I've had a lot of students and they're doing a hell of a good job covering that ground. So I'm gonna go somewhere else. I have about 2,400 urns in front of me. I hope to show them in New York. I'm lecturing next fall at the Natural History Museum in New York to get this show off the road, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited that pottery can reach out into the world in all kinds of ways. I'm so excited that, of course, you know, I'm up to my neck in it, right? Completely up to my neck in it. And I know that that's where I should be. That I have to be so far deep into my creative process in making that I can't help it. That I don't have to be good, I have to be great, right? And I only must let the soft animal of my body love what I love, because that's how you show up. You show up, that's what you do. I think you just gotta show up. You gotta show up for the woman in Guatemala. You gotta show up for the wandering albatross. You gotta show up for Montana. And fortunately for me, you guys showed up for me tonight. Thank you so much for coming. It was a pleasure spending time with you. Hold on. Are there any questions from the non-student area? Okay, go ahead. Lizzie, do you have a
Yes,
question
sure,
for
I
me?
do. Okay, so when you start a project like endangered species, isn't it sort of like an emotional roller coaster? I mean, how do you get up and say, okay, I'm going to shoot myself with these endangered species? Now they've added 5 more in Pennsylvania. Or how do you deal with that kind of, it's bigger than me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we fess up, Lizzie?
No,
No, okay.
absolutely not.
Absolutely not. So Lizzie's asking me about how to deal with kind of ebbs and flows or struggles with such a large project, especially such a heavy subject. You know, it's hard for a little pot to carry such a big idea. Do you know? The pots, they really can do that. So I think there's a few things. I think I show up. I think the pleasure of drawing carries me a long way. You know, like just the pleasure of moving the tool through the clay, and the pleasure of enjoying skill. Like when I draw one that's really good, it's just joyous for me. And some days I get bummed out and I just have a little cry and then I get back to it. Because a lot of species just aren't going to make it. So I have to tell you, when things get really rough, like bad is bad, like that frog's not going to make it, by the way. It just isn't. There's just not enough room in Pennsylvania for that frog. But you know what I do? This is ridiculous. I like to watch American Ninja Warrior. It's this TV show where people like run and jump over things and then they do like a little flip or something and everybody claps. You know, it kind of lightens the load. So when you see skill, you feel better. When you see somebody do something skillful, you feel better. So whether it be my drawing or watching somebody do a ridiculous, fabulous thing in under 2 minutes, I think that's what I do. You gotta find that little thing, you know. Okay, any other questions? John?
Yeah, I'm just curious, you know, there's quite a journey you painted for us there. I'm sure there's a lot of, that was a good ride, thank you. You told us in the stories about the physical and other logistical things you faced along the way, but undoubtedly there must be conceptual and inspirational hurdles. Maybe share some of those and how you cope with them, how you work out of them and into a place that's turned it into a productive material, if you can. Sorry if that's too deep.
Thanks. John is asking me about how to get over the intellectual or conceptual rough patches. You know, so I think, John, there's a couple different things here. One is I don't always know what my work is about, and in fact, I'm sometimes the last person to know it, and I just work, and then I look at all that work and I think, oh, this is about X. And then I kind of dive in there more. Do you know? So I think that, all of the pots about home, I didn't know why I was drawing that. I just knew that I loved, my furniture is almost all from my grandparents, and I just love that furniture. I never would buy it in a million years, but I love it because it was theirs. And, you know, they really are getting much, much older, and I'm losing some now. So I have a different relationship with that furniture. So I started drawing it on my pots. And then over time, it became really clear that those drawings were about domesticity and intimacy. But I didn't really know that when I started. Mostly I just liked that couch. And I liked the puffiness of the couch and how it swelled where the picture swelled. Do you know? So I think that often what the work is about comes up a little bit later. Sadly, in a slide talk, you present it with 20/20 hindsight. Do you know? But I definitely have times when I don't really have ideas. When I very first moved to Montana, there was 2 years where I just didn't have one idea in my brain at all. And I just drew flowers for 2 years. Because I just wanted to show up. The farther away I got from making, like if I got a mile from making, it was 2 miles back. Do you know? So I just wanted to show up, and flowers were just fine. You know? So sometimes the work is super personal, and then I don't really like to send it out into the world. So sometimes I have those kinds of struggles. I did a body of work about communication, and some of those pots are in the gallery, but they're all decorated with binary code, and they say things, so if you read code, you can read them. And the ones in the gallery all are decorated with a heartbeat. So all of the ones and zeros say the thump, the thump, the thump, the thump. Right, like that. And then there's sort of letters that are moving down, which is sort of a different way of communicating. So, but I think, John, I don't know. I think my job's to show up. Like I gotta show up and not lie too much, just a little bit, yes? And then the ideas show up later. Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Robin, hi.
April.
April.
Alice.
April's changing her name for Robin. Hi, April, what's up, babe?
So, how do you know when you have completed the series? Or whatever is it?
Yeah.
The endangered species, hopefully there is an end to that, at least
Yeah.
at the time you're doing it.
Yeah.
But with the clouds.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good question. So April's asking me how I know when I've finished a body of work, like when is that kind of done? And I think that there's a few things that happen. One, my production gets very slow because I'm getting a little bit bored. Do you know? So that's one thing. And the other thing is that I kind of try to have a new idea every 2 years. And so I kind of, when I'm getting up to that 2-year mark, I can feel myself getting a little bit restless. And often I have to find a different technique or some other form to kind of jumpstart me. The Endangered Species Project is unusual, which is why I've talked about it so much, because this is a 4-year project. And that feels like a very long time. And drawing all those plates for Pennsylvania, that was like, I was ready to be done after about 150. I mean, you guys, there's 80 moths. Can you imagine drawing 80 moths? Like, all I could think of was like John James Audubon, like I gotta start drawing with my other hand, you know, it's like, but I think that I get a little bit bored and I get a little restless, and also something in the work doesn't feel as, the energy changes, you know, it just, something changes in there. And you can see it, people can see it, like that, you know, so, okay, yeah. Oh, hi Martha.
Hi. You said that you had done New Mexico's endangered species. Can we see those someplace?
Yes, you can. Good question. So I did the federally listed species that live in the state of New Mexico. There's 41 of them, and they are hanging in the Blue Dome Gallery at Bear Mountain. And I also brought some normal pots. So I brought some pictures with clouds, and I brought some bedrooms and some kitchens and some binary code, so that, because the endangered species pots are a little expensive, and the other pots are not as expensive. So I wanted to bring a full range, and also to give the gallery some flexibility, because I wanted to keep all of those plates together until the show is over. So there's a little bit of visual impact. So that was a plant practically. Yeah.
Last summer, I did some pots here in Silver City.
Mhm.
I heard that my daughter's cat died.
Yeah.
Six-toed Joe.
Six-toed Joe.
22 years old.
Oh,
And
that's a good run.
I was working here and firing raku with
Yeah.
Claude.
Yeah.
And so I did an urn for Claude. Then I got back to Tucson, and over the past year, I've had four losses in my life. Special people.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry.
I too then had to go to the funeral home and find out how much ashes I'm going to get out
Yeah.
of my friend Sydney, and out of my friend Randy, and out of my nephew. And
I'm sorry.
well, it was very pathetic. It was a learning experience. I'm at the age now where that's happening more in my life.
Right.
I'm losing people.
Yeah.
And people come to me now and ask if I'll do ashes.
Mm-hmm.
I only want to do it for somebody that I can feel when I'm doing it. It's kind of like that guy gets up and eulogizing and saying, I didn't know him, but I can't go to that kind of a funeral. And I can't make the urn unless it's for somebody I know. And then they offer to buy it, which is, I can't do that either. That's there's no love in that. So it relates to the question that was over there about how you deal with it when you feel like you're overwhelmed by the project itself.
Yeah.
In my case, it wasn't a project. It's ongoing until I'm gone.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll make my urn.
You might.
But
I hope not, but maybe.
okay, so
But I think you're about the size of a deer.
oh,
Yeah. I think I got your number. You're about the size of a deer. You guys, it's kind of a morbid project. It's a morbid project, but look, man, the AIDS quote was morbid. I mean, that was morbid, but that changed people's lives. So I feel a little bit like this thing about being seen and unseen. And I also honestly feel like it's what I can do. I can't change the world, but I can make some urns, that I can do. And what I would say to you guys, honestly. Yeah.
So as a potter for a really long time, who is your inspired? What are your, as a potter, do you have potters above you that you were inspired by?
Oh my God, what a good question. Like a million. Do you know? Like so many. And mostly I'm inspired by people who can kind of keep doing it. Do you know, kind of keep watching. But I'm really interested in potters whose work changes over time. Like Bobby Silverman is a really great example of a potter that his work has changed and changed and changed. And now he's not really making pots anymore, but that seems just fine to me. And I have to say, as a young woman, when I came up in the field, there was a lot of young women students, but there were almost no women teachers. And so I really honed in on those women teachers like crazy, because I needed a role model. And so Betty Woodman was a huge influence for me. Some for her work, but mostly for her chutzpah, you know, and that she just, she was like 4'5", but she filled up the whole room. You know, so I think why people influence you, it's so interesting. Some it's the work, like Linda Zakora makes beautiful pots, hands down. Some of the most beautiful pots in the world she's making. But somebody else maybe I'm influenced by or admiring of their life. Like how do they put their life together as a maker? It's not easy being an artist, you know? So I think that that's a complicated question, but I would say that my early pots were really influenced by Japanese pots, because that's what I learned about. And it's a very, very strong aesthetic. And then I had to rebel against it, do you know? So then I kind of moved on to somewhere else. But my teachers, I would say also too, to have someone believe in you is a big deal. So I think that happened with me.
Another question, have you been in Ceramics Monthly?
Yeah, on the cover. Yeah. Last 2 years ago, I was on the cover with those clouds. Yeah, so, yeah.
This is probably putting you on the spot, but where's been your favorite place to teach?
Oh, this is Amelia, she's in my class. My favorite place to teach. Do you mean like visiting artists or school or?
Just your favorite experience.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you love teaching somewhere because it's beautiful. And sometimes you love teaching somewhere because it's home. I love how smart the students are in Canada. They are so smart. Because they have like craft theory, you know? And they work so hard. So I love teaching in Nova Scotia and over outside of Alberta. I've taught in Canada a lot. I'm trying to get a Canadian to marry me. So if you guys know any Canadians, I would like dual citizenship. I'm like totally nice. We don't really have to be involved that much, just enough, you know. But I would say I love teaching in Canada because the students just were relentlessly devoted to anything they were doing. So if they were mixing clay, they were devoted to that. If they were getting ready for a potluck, they were shredding lemon zest. If they, you know, like there was just such an incredible passion in there. And I also love that they were kind of a little hard on me in a way, like they would really ask me hard questions. So I would have to say, those Canadians, hey. Yeah.
So there's so much going on in everyone's life. How do you balance time for making? How do you, is there a certain way that you set aside or
Yeah.
how do you navigate that?
Yeah, so I think of it the other way. I'm in the studio and then I try to fit life in. Do you know, Betty Woodman would say you just get in the studio and everything falls into place, and there's a little bit of truth to that. So some of it is that that's the home base, do you know? And then I go, oh shit, I gotta go to school, and then I'll be, oh, I gotta call my mother, and then I'll be like, Juliet, you haven't cooked a meal in 10 days. My dog is looking at me like, who are you? Do you know, so things kick in and I have to take care of them, but mostly I do the best when I'm sort of in the studio first. And then everything, and then while the pots are setting up, I make some phone calls, I check my email. I do have some people that help me pack and ship, and then there's one gal who will come maybe once a month and she'll read me my emails while I'm working, and she'll type. And that's great, because my emails, I can get a lot. And so that's really loosened me up a little bit. And I think another sort of flip side of that, honestly, Aurora, is that I just don't feel bad when I blow it. Like poor Kelly, where is Kelly? Did Kelly have to leave? Kelly must have sent me an email 50 times to get images, do you know? And so finally I was like, okay, now I'm here, hold on, okay, now I'm here. And I could send her images for them, so. But I don't really think we ever balanced, and I'm tired of feeling bad about it. So I just do the best I can, so. Yeah. Hi, Patty.
Hi. What do you feel is career fulfillment in ceramics?
What do I feel is what?
Career fulfillment.
Career fulfillment?
Mm-hmm.
For you?
For you.
For me?
Yeah, what do you feel like that is?
Well, you know, it changes all the time. Pat is asking me what career fulfillment in ceramics means. That's like a heavy question. So, I mean, I think it changes. Like, I think that sometimes the visibility gives me a sense of satisfaction. I think sometimes discovering a new body of work, like the houses, like those, that was really satisfying to me. And develop that website so that I could use the internet as a gallery, right? That was really satisfying. I'd never seen anybody do that. I'd never seen anybody develop work that would change as you move through the site, right? So that was incredibly fulfilling. I think service is incredibly fulfilling to me. Like serving on the board of NCCA, serving that. Helping emerging artists is like awesome. It's one of my favorite things to do. Right now I'm on a jag with two things. One, K through 12 teachers don't get enough attention. So that's something I'm working on. And then the other is that museums have got to start collecting ceramics that isn't only historical. Do you know? Like there'll be 50 Greek pots in the first floor of the Met, and there'll be like one contemporary thing. Do you know? And I feel like this is a weakness in our field that I would like to address. So if anybody here runs a museum, I'm looking for you. Yeah, hey, hi Martha.
So as an artist, how difficult is it to show your body of work and to exhibit your work like you did with the clouds? That was beautiful. How much work goes into that? And I imagine that that's very satisfying because you've been able to display all your body of work. So how much work goes into that, and how do you make it happen?
Yeah, it's a great question, Martha. So a lot of work. So I think that I have an idea, and I sort of poke at it a little bit, and then I get a location for it, and then I go scout the location. And then I see how many plates do I need in here, how many cups do I need in, and I kind of will start working on that. So that's how the installation goes, right? But I think that my job is to show up and to make as much as I can for that specific thing. And I just knew that about 450 plates would be enough for that. And then I made 50 plates for the opening. I think, Martha, what's maybe more interesting than that is that I love making work, and I feel very comfortable as a potter until I ship the show out. And like when I've packed it all up and I have those 12 boxes that are going to go across the country, and suddenly this thing that was tremendously personal is going to become incredibly public, and it just kills me. I'm like a wreck. Like sometimes I have to pull over while I'm driving to UPS. Sometimes I have to have my assistant drive me, and often when I get back from UPS I have to go right to bed. Because there's something about, it's like so traumatic, I can't even tell you. Like it's embarrassing, but that's the hardest part of my process, is when something goes from being so personal. And my pots in my life is suddenly your pots in your life. And that's a very tender moment. So, yeah, last one.
My last and final question. So
Okay.
as a potter from like, you made thousands and thousands of pots. Do you have like a favorite kind of clay?
A favorite kind of clay?
Yeah, like what's your favorite, like the most you use? Like what's the, you have?
Well, I have this clay in my recipe named XX Sagger, and I think that's like a sexy name for clay. So I like that. And then my favorite fluxes will last the night. And I also like Nepside, but I think will last the night. That's like snappy, do you know? And my favorite kaolin is tile 6, but my favorite name of kaolin is Avery. And so I think that's pretty good.
Do you make your own clay or do you buy them as blocks?
I have somebody make it for me. I don't make it anymore. I'm too old. Okay. I just want to quickly finish with this, that you don't have to be good. You don't have to walk on your knees for 100 miles to the desert retenting. You only must let the soft animal of your body love what it was, love what it loves. Tell me about despair yours, and I will tell you mine. And meanwhile, the world goes on. And meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles are moving across the landscape, over the prairies and the deep, deep trees. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high and exciting, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, and it calls to you like wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over again, announcing your place in the family of things. We are in a family of things. Whether they be us or our pots, we're up to our neck in it. Thanks for coming.